afternoon, everyone. And thank you for joining us today. We are really excited to talk to you about ways to help reduce your mucus. And we'll just start with a few housekeeping bits and then we'll get started with the presentation. So I'm just going to read the disclaimer. This presentation is a corporate presentation from Atos Medical Group. Nothing in this presentation provides any diagnosis, clinical advice, indication, guide, warranty or guarantee. Nothing in this presentation can substitute individual advice or guidance from a qualified healthcare professional. You must see your clinician or your qualified caregiver for advice on your condition and on products that may be appropriate for you. I just want to remind you all that this event is being recorded and live streamed on Facebook, and by joining this webinar you're consenting to being recorded and live streamed during this event. None of your cameras are on though, so don't worry. So my name is Jess and I am the head of nursing here at Atos, and today I'm really pleased to be joined by Becky.
Hi guys, I'm Becky. So I'm a new field nurse with Atos and I'm covering London and the South East. As Jess said earlier, we've got the question and answer box and the chat box at the bottom of the screen. So if you think of any questions, comments or experiences at any point, just pop them in those boxes and we'll go through everything at the end. Okay. So we're going to kick things off with a poll. So how long ago did you have your laryngectomy surgery? That's the first poll. So a screen should pop up on your screen. So if you just pick the most appropriate answer for you guys, and then we'll go through the answers in a minute. Just give you a chance to fill that in. So we've got less than 1 year, 1 to 4 years, or 5+ years. How are we doing? Okay, so from this I can see most of you, 1 to 4 years, the majority 55%, and then 5+ years. So loads of experience in the room with us today, which is great. So like I said, feel free to put your kind of experiences and comments, which some people who haven't had the laryngectomies quite as long might find really useful as well. And you guys that haven't yet had the laryngectomy quite as long, hopefully you'll learn quite a lot today. So thank you for answering that.
Good. Okay, so we're just going to talk about lung function and why we produce mucus. Next slide, please. And we don't want to bog you down with too much of the sciencey bits, but I feel it's really important as someone that has had a laryngectomy to have a basic understanding of key elements of the respiratory system. And we'll touch on kind of a normal airway pre-laryngectomy surgery versus what we would call maybe an altered airway, which is after your laryngectomy surgery, throughout this presentation. So this picture shows a normal or an unaltered airway, and I want to briefly touch on the importance of our nose, or upper airway as it's known. It's responsible for warming and filtering the air that we breathe. And as we look a bit lower down, it's called the lower airway. We kind of go down into the lungs. And as you can see, there's an enlarged image on the right-hand side, and these are called the alveoli. And they're little air sacs, and these alveoli are responsible for gas exchange, so taking in the oxygen and getting rid of the carbon dioxide that we breathe. And I should mention that the entire respiratory system contains tiny little hairs, and these are called cilia, and these are responsible for catching and excreting dust and other particles that enter our lungs. And we'll look a little bit more into the cilia as we go on through the presentation. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, there's some key functions of the respiratory system. And as mentioned on the last slide, these include humidification, filtration, and then something that we call breathing resistance. And all of these elements play a vital role in maintaining lung health and function. Humidification and filtration, they kind of go hand in hand as we rely on the warmth to enable those cilia, those little hairs I spoke about, to function. And the cilia is ultimately responsible for filtration as it catches unwanted particles and moves them up and allows us to cough them out. And finally, I want to touch on what is called breathing resistance. So we don't want to get too technical here, but everyone has what is called a resistance of breathing. And this breathing resistance provides a sort of back pressure, which acts as a kind of scaffolding, if you like, which helps to keep those little alveoli, those little air sacs open to allow for as much oxygen as possible to enter the body, which, as we know, is vital to fuel organs and muscles. And I think a good example of this is if you imagine that you're watching maybe the sprinting on television, at the end of the race, you will notice that the runners are always breathing through pursed lips, and that is to increase the resistance for this reason that we mentioned about oxygen intake. And to make it a little bit more relatable to you guys that have gone through a laryngectomy surgery, all of this resistance is lost when you have that surgery. And this is where a HME plays a vital role, and it gives you back some of that resistance of breathing. Next slide, please. We'll just take a little look at why we produce mucus. And mucus is normal. Production of mucus, it's normal. And we produce over 1 litre of it every single day, which is kind of hard to imagine, really. And pre-surgery, you probably didn't notice it as much as you would have swallowed the majority of it. But since the surgery, the only way for you to get it out is to cough it out through your stoma. And mucus is one of the ways that the lungs clean themselves. And as mentioned earlier, the mucus traps unwanted particles, and that is then moved up the airway via the cilia, those little hairs I keep talking about, and allows us to cough it out. So when the body produces excess mucus, or if the mucus is not being shifted adequately, this is when things can start to impact your daily life. And we'll take a look at mucus types just in a second.
So just to go over the different types of mucus that you might experience, and how they might be an indicator of your health as well. So firstly, thin and clear mucus is a sign of healthy lungs and nothing to worry about. If you find your mucus is white or a bit thicker, and that can have a few different potential indications. So it may be that you're dehydrated, which could then in turn to make you feel a bit congested as well. This kind of mucus can also be linked with pre-existing lung conditions like asthma or COPD, things like that. If you find your mucus is yellow or green, whether it's dark or light, this can be, or usually be, a sign that there's an infection starting, if it's a bit lighter, or in full swing if it is a darker yellow or green. So if this is the case, we'd recommend you seeking advice from your GP or your clinician just to discuss if treatment is needed. And if this is the case as well, it might be worth looking out for other symptoms in conjunction, so fevers, shortness of breath, an increase in coughing, things like that. Pink or red mucus, so that'd be an indication that it's blood stained or streaked. And again, we'd recommend you speak to your healthcare professional about this. Could be a sign that something needs investigating, or just simply that, you know, your airway's a bit dry and a bit sore down there, but just worth noting. And just as we mentioned earlier as well, if you've got a pre-existing lung condition like COPD or asthma, or if you're an ex-smoker, you might find that your normal mucus is a bit different to what somebody else's normal mucus might be. So it's about getting to know your body, your mucus, and what's your normal, really. So after talking a little bit about lung health and mucus, our next poll is, do you feel you suffer with excess mucus? So again, if you answer this question here on the screen, and we'll go through the answers in a minute. Just give you a bit of time to do that. So do you feel you suffer with excess mucus? Yes, no, or occasionally? So it's a bit of a mix here. So more predominantly occasionally, and a few 37% yes. So that's interesting. So leading on from that, our next poll is: do you feel, or do you think the season impacts on your mucus production at all? So again, the choices here would be yes, no, or sometimes. Give you a minute to fill that in.
I saw somebody in the chat just say what constitutes as excessive mucus, and I would probably say, you know, again, this is where it links back to get to know your normal. But, you know, if you're kind of not able to keep a base plate or a HME on for, you know, over an hour or more, then you probably have excessive mucus. You know, if you'll find you're having to take it off all the time to cough out your mucus.
Okay, so do you think the seasons impact your mucus production? So yeah, most people saying yes or sometimes at least. So that's something quite, common as well. So that's really interesting. Thank you for filling that out, guys. So hopefully now we'll go through, or you'll be able to take away some tips and information from how to help reduce this excess mucus that you're having.
Good. So we've spoken and learnt lots about normal lung function, and we've touched on how you, having had a laryngectomy surgery, alters your airway. So we're going to look at HME use and why it is so vital. Again, this slide here just reiterates the key changes, and now you breathe solely through your neck, through the stoma in your neck. You no longer have the ability to warm and filter the air that your nose previously, you know, carried out that task of warming and filtering the air to keep your lungs working well. And now I've spoken a lot about cilia, these tiny little hairs that I keep mentioning, and we're going to take a quick look at a video. It's a very short video to see them in action, and you'll notice the impaired function when the humidification is lost. So when that warmth and moisture is lost. We'll take a look at that video now. I think we've lost the sound on it, but this here is showing the oh, have we got some
the
sound
air
there?
that we breathe in, the cilia sweep. We have millions of tiny hairs called cilia that sweep back and forth, transporting mucus away from the airways. The mucus traps the dust and germs in the air that we breathe in. The cilia sweep back and forth about 10 times per second. At the microscopic level, we can see how, without the use of an HME, the unconditioned air is affecting the airways. The dry air is causing the cilia to move slower and mucus is building up.
Yeah, so I really like that video. I think it's a really clear representation of what happens if you maybe aren't wearing a HME like you should be, and once you have that surgery, the difference. So we're going to talk about HMEs now and what they do. HMEs are made of a special type of foam, and they are treated in a salt kind of solution. It's called calcium chloride, and it works to trap the humidity and warm the air within the layers of the foam. The density of the foam determines how much a HME helps with warming and moistening the air that you breathe, and how much breathing resistance there is within a HME as well. The next few slides will show how wearing a HME improves lung health, and we've also got a little bit of data on our Provox Life range and how that has positively impacted people that have gone through laryngectomy surgery as well. So it's no secret by now that using a HME is highly recommended, and wearing one 24 hours a day, 7 days a week may lead to an overall better quality of life, allowing you to get back to the things that you enjoy. The image on the right is a really nice, simple representation of what can happen by being compliant with your HMEs, both day and night. This reduced mucus leads to reduced coughing, which leads to an overall improved lung health and lung function. And all of this kind of together leads to an overall improved quality of life. And it's also important to ensure that, you know, you are exercising within your limits and your capacity. Make sure you stay connected with others and make sure you're getting outside, you know, every day as well is really, really important for you. And even if you're not a regular HME user, using a HME for even 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening can help reduce your mucus. To start with, it can feel a bit worse because your cilia, the tiny little hairs, they're working, you know, so you pop a HME on and it starts to warm the inside of your lungs up, and those hairs start to work. And what they do is they start to work to clear all that dried mucus kind of that gets collected at the bottom of your lungs. However, with consistent and continued usage over time, your normal production of mucus will become less. It's about taking, you know, the small steps towards better lung health. And as you can see from the graphs here, there is a significant difference even after just 2 weeks on both coughing and mucus production. So the graph on the left shows coughing, the graph on the right shows mucus, and you can see that significant reduction there, and it just continues to reduce within a 12-week period. And it really is kind of about, you know, applying that consistency to your daily routine to get the best out of your products that you're using. And here we have some data on our Provox Life range. So you can see that a massive 98% of the research participants actually preferred using Provox Life compared to their previous HME. Now, it's worth mentioning there is a lot of Provox Life HMEs to choose from. And this is because there has been a HME designed for every aspect of your life, you know, whether you're going to work, whether you're doing some gardening, going for a walk, a run. So, you know, I think if you're established, that's fine to explore all the options. But if you're a first-time user or you're looking to try Provox Life, I think a really good starting point would be either the home or the go, and match that with the nighttime HME. So you've got two HMEs as a starting point. But, you know, I mentioned to discuss this with your clinician at the hospital if you think that you'd like to try it. And you can scan the little QR code on the screen to see the entire range, or you can just head over to our website and you'll find the whole Provox Life range there. Now, these figures are also from our Provox Life evaluation. And as I mentioned earlier, you can see the benefits after 12 weeks, and it led to a 50% cough reduction. And this was versus their usual routine. So whatever they were using before, when they swapped to Provox Life, they saw a massive reduction after that consistent 12-week period, and things really started to settle for these patients that tried it out. And if you're unsure, you know, if you haven't kind of maybe thought about this before, might not cross your mind, you might just kind of have thought maybe it's a regular kind of byproduct of having a laryngectomy or something like that. We've got a cough tracker that you can download. You can head over to our Atos Care website. Or you can scan the little QR code down there, and this can be really helpful. You know, I think you will have to take a little bit of time to make note of these things, but I think ultimately it is quite worth it if you're kind of looking for a starting point. The Atos Care website will just go into the chat down at the bottom there. And if you struggle to use a HME, you know, some people don't use HMEs. You might use a bib or something like that, or you might just use it for going out or something like that. So if you're struggling to really wear a HME 24/7, we really recommend finding a new and manageable routine, and that's a really good starting place. So, for example, incorporate your stoma care and your HME application, just like you'd factor in brushing your teeth in the mornings. You know, it's something we do every day. We don't really think twice about it. And like anything, it will become part of your normal routine before you know it. It just requires that initial kind of application of the consistency. So whatever that looks like for you, whether it's you get up and you do it then, or you get up, you have a bit of breakfast and you shower, and then you kind of do your stoma care, put your base plate on, or your HME in situ. This can be really helpful for you just to get into the swing of things. So we've learned so much about the sciencey bits today, and I just want to take a little look at some additional ways to help reduce your mucus. It's all well and good wearing a HME all the time, but there are some extra elements. So hydration, nutrition, and sleep. These are so important, and they all play a part in the production of mucus. Making sure you're drinking plenty of water to stay hydrated. This will lead to thinner mucus, a better, it will enable you to cough it out much easier as well. And be aware of your caffeine intake. So both alcohol and coffee can dehydrate you, which may lead to more mucus. And making sure you're getting enough fruit and veg in your diet. I know this might not be applicable to all of you. Some of you might still be tube fed, or, you might have some altered dietary requirements since your surgery. But if this is applicable, make sure you're getting enough in there. So fruits and vegetables, they're a top source of antioxidants, nutrients that promote your body's ability to fight off infections and disease. In addition to supplying nutrients, things like garlic, watercress, celery, pickles, onions, lemons, parsley, these have all been looked at by the Lung Institute, and they have shown to reduce mucus production. And the Lung Institute have also suggested that avoiding things like cabbage, corn and corn products, bananas, they may accelerate mucus production. So again, it's worth looking at what suits you and what works for you, but these are some things to be aware of. Avoid kind of excessive dairy consumption as well. That can play a part in the thickness and the production of your mucus. Try swapping your saturated fat in your diet, such as butter, out for something like olive oil as a substitute. And I can't stress this enough as well, getting a good night's sleep. This helps to strengthen your immune system. So if you're someone that, maybe you suffer from frequent chest infections or something like this, or you do have a pre-existing lung condition, making sure that your sleep is as good as it can be is just so important for everything, for all of your health. And here we have some really simple top tips to help reduce your mucus production. If it's a bit colder outside, it's been very windy lately, try wearing a scarf over your HME. As you know, the HME will warm the air to a certain degree, but if it's really, really cold outside, you might want to add something on top just to help trap that warm air that you're breathing in and out. It can reduce your mucus. Brushing your teeth twice a day. We don't really want bacteria to linger in your mouth. That just an overall general good hygiene standards is always recommended. Making sure your house is heated to a constant temperature. So don't be flicking your heating on and off, up and down all the time. If you can find something that is constant, that is much more beneficial, because we do kind of enter this sort of catch-22 situation, if you like. So the colder months, we definitely want your house to be warm, but with all that central heating, it then can also dry you out, which is our next point. Investing in a humidifier to keep around your house. So maybe it's by your bedside, maybe it's next to you while you're watching the telly. A humidifier added into your house can make a huge difference, especially during those colder months when you have the heating on a bit more often. And as always, opening the window, reducing the amount of dust, and letting all that fresh air in, recycling the air that is in your house for new air is always recommended as well. This is a really good time to mention our breathing techniques workshop, which is taking place next week. So this will be more interactive. You can have the option of having your cameras on and your microphones on. You're going to be joined by our speech and language therapist, Alison, and she's going to be talking you through and demonstrating different ways of breathing, and that is to help improve your speech. So if you're looking to improve your speech, definitely sign up for this. Again, you can scan that QR code that's on the screen, and I think there will be another email that goes out just if you've missed the first one that went out as well. So these breathing techniques will also help with your mucus clearing as well, how to cough out your mucus. It's all kind of linked together really nicely. And as we kind of come to the end of the presentation, we've got some support that's available from Atos Care. We've got our amazing customer care team that are in the office, and they are on the end of the phone. So if you're with us, you should know who your regular customer care person is, who you contact regularly. There's an email address there if you're not sure though. We've also got our specialist nursing team, so myself and Becky, and we've got some other nurses up and down the country as well that can come out to you and do some home visits if it's suitable. And if you're not sure, if you think it's something you benefit from, just check with your customer care agent, and just there's not cover all over the country at the moment, but just inquire about that and they'll give you some advice on whether a nurse can come out to you or not. And then, as always, we've got our MyLife online events, so webinars and workshops that you can sign up to. And then there's a few additional resources as well. So the British Heart Foundation, Age UK, some ones along the bottom there, Macmillan and the Swallows charity. These are all really good to look into for a little bit of extra support in improving the quality of life. Thank you. So that comes to the end of our presentation, and we'd just like to open up the floor to some questions now. So again, if you use that chat box or the Q&A box, then we will get to it. So Becky, what have you?
Yeah, we've had a few come in already. Thank you. So first one from the question answer box. So this time of year, I feel like I get more mucus. Is this normal? Is the first question.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I think that it is really normal. So typically when we say seasonally, it's normally when summer's in full swing, there's loads of pollen in the air, and your lungs are getting irritated by that. And then this time of year when it's a bit colder, again, it's things like the heating being on. So as we mentioned, yes, we want your house to be heated to a constant temperature, but it also will kind of dry you out a little bit in turn as well. So look into maybe getting a humidifier in your house. But also it's things like going in and out of the cold and windy to the warm air. And I think, laryngectomy or not, I think it's a really common time of year for people to kind of pick up chest infections as well, all that coldness, and in and out of the warm and cold air that can really play a part in dry lungs and irritated lungs. So those little top tips that we spoke about just a minute ago, maybe popping an extra scarf over your HME when you're out and about, that may help to just keep some of that warmth trapped in while you're out in the cold, so that it's not such a difference when you come back indoors. So yeah, I think it's really normal. And I would also, you know, if you're not 100% compliant with your HMEs, so again, as I mentioned, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, is ideal, to be wearing a HME. So if you're not fully compliant with that, maybe start building up your routine to make sure you've got one on all the time. And you know, it can be a little bit difficult for some people to have that transition to 24/7 HME usage, but with those buildable routines, you know, if you're currently only wearing it in the morning, try wearing it for that morning length, and then maybe popping it on for a couple of hours in the afternoon to build up that tolerance that you need.
Okay, so another question that's come in is, has anyone got any information about COVID and laryngectomies, in that are we better or worse off?
This is interesting, this question. I don't know that there is any specific research that's out, but what we can do, who was that? Was that John that sent that in?
John, yeah.
John, what we can do is we can, we've got a clinical education team, and we can get in touch with them and see if there is any kind of official research that's come out. It's been a bit of a long-standing, I know from being out visiting patients, especially something simple like where to do the swab from if you're testing for COVID. And there was some question in the beginning about whether you should swab your stoma site as well. The answer is yes. So still do your nasal passage and your stoma as well, if you have to do a test for COVID. But yeah, as it stands, I don't have any solid information, I'm afraid, about that. But we'll look into that. I'll write your name down, and we can get in touch with you afterwards with the clinical education team if they have anything. But it's interesting to me as well. I think I've been quite keen to know if there is a, you know, higher risk or whether there's not much difference. We do have, you know, there's different HMEs that you can use for extra protection that do have a filter, so they act as kind of your mask, as it were. I think we've got the Provox Life Protect. It's a little bit bulkier, but it comes with what they call an electrostatic filter, and that is essentially like a mask for you guys, to give your lungs that extra protection from viruses and bacteria as well.
So the next, it's kind of like a comments come through question. It's from Alan, sorry. So is it just me, or has anyone else noticed that since having a laryngectomy, your nose runs for extended periods, and some days all day long?
Yeah,
it's something that kind of see a lot, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, I think we see this out in the field quite a lot, don't we, Becky? Yeah. And it's always a really tricky one. I think my number one advice or thing to kind of investigate is, are you suffering from any sort of reflux? You know, are you on any sort of like an omeprazole or a lansoprazole, something like that, to protect the lining of your stomach if you are eating? That seems to play a bit of a role if you've got some reflux going on. But it does seem to be a little bit of an annoying byproduct of the surgery. And you know, have you got a stricture? There's a few different reasons as to why it may run excessively. Sometimes, unfortunately, Alan, there's not always a clear answer, which is, I know it's not the answer you want to hear, but unfortunately that's kind of what we've experienced out in the field is they've investigated all of these things. You know, are they on stomach protection medication? Have they got a stricture in their airway or their esophagus that's causing difficulty swallowing, or, you know, keeping food down? So just make sure that you're kind of good from that point of view. But again, you know, I can think of a patient that I've seen in the community, and it's kind of ways of managing. So if you were to bend down to the floor to pick something up, instead of, you know, having your head forward, you'd have to kind of adjust the way that you would bend down. So, you know, sit down on something and keep your head a bit more upright, just to help that gravity. And also, eating and drinking I can think of one of my poor patients that his coffee comes out every time he takes a drink of coffee. It comes out his nose. But what we found is when I went to see him that actually he's kind of sipping his coffee and going about his regular tasks, and his head is all over the place. And actually, sometimes what it comes down to is just being aware of your daily tasks. And yes, it probably is a little bit more frustrating for you guys initially, but again, like I said about those buildable habits, it kind of becomes normal, your new normal, before you even realize, just a bit of practice and a little bit of mindfulness when you're taking a sip of coffee. Okay, I've had some drink. It's previously come shooting out my nose, and that's because I'm drinking while trying to multitask and do other things in the house. And it may be that you just need to adjust those routines slightly and take a little bit of time just to let that drink or food go down before you then go about sort of bending down and picking things up and moving things around the house is probably my best advice. But yeah, make sure, speak with your clinician if it's really bothersome to you and it's kind of beyond the point you're kind of at despair with it. I think definitely have a chat with them and just see whether you need anything else looking into, any further investigation, just to check that things are okay. But yeah, unfortunately, it seems to be a little bit of an annoying byproduct of the surgery.
And we've got a question from John. So he's asking if there's any data on comparing Buchanan bibs to HMEs regarding lung function.
Again, John, I'm sure there are. We'll get our clinical education team to pull. They've got all of the research and the data tucked away in on the system, so we can look into that. But I can tell you that we don't actually advertise bibs as humidification because of they need to be really kind of set over your stoma. They will give you an element of warmth, but that resistance not so much, because they kind of just lay over your stoma, don't they? They don't really kind of clip into place and create that element of resistance. So I think if I speak from experience, and Becky, jump in if you have anything else as well, but speak from experience about visiting laryngectomy patients in the community, I will say that 9 times out of 10, bib users will often struggle more with things like mucus and secretion
management.
Yeah, absolutely, and frequent chest infections as well, frequent things like that, and that is because if you think about it, the bib doesn't actually seal around underneath. You put your bib on and you're still getting all this cold air come up to the sides, and the bacteria as well. You're more open to bacteria entering your lungs. And
they shift around and move around a lot, don't they, as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, at least with a HME, you can kind of, okay, if you cough into it, you can kind of chuck it away, pop a new one on, and it's nice and clean. Whereas your bib is sort of flapping in the wind and it's moving all around your chest. And if it's a bit sweaty, it picks up bacteria on the inside of your bib. But this is where, if you're thinking of making the change from bibs to HMEs, this is where that buildable routine will come up. And also, I will mention that if you have been using a bib for a really long time, your lungs aren't conditioned to that extra bit of resistance. So it is kind of like retraining your lungs almost, and making sure that it will be a bit of a process. So that's where that kind of 12, 13 weeks comes in. You really need to kind of persevere throughout that time, because your lungs are going to be warming up, they're going to start to function properly, and those hairs, those cilia that we talk about a lot, they will start to warm up and start to move backwards and forwards like that video showed. So if it's something you're thinking of, definitely persevere. It will be worth it in the end. I think that a lot of patients will give up quite quickly, this particularly within that first 2-week period, that's when
harder, can't it? Like when you start using them to begin with, and actually need to break through that kind of 2-week period.
Absolutely. And, you know, you get patients that say, oh God, I can't bear it. It's just, I've put on a HME and I've got more mucus than ever. And that is because, you know, I think I always like to pop it in simple terms. You get kind of crusty lungs almost. So all that mucus from your cold air that you've been breathing in, and the hairs aren't working. So all of that mucus and dust gets trapped at the bottom and just kind of sits there. So then they start functioning, and all of that stuff that's already there then starts to come up, and it takes a little while for your body to adjust to that.
It's a sign that you are adjusting and that it is kind of working.
Yeah. So pushing on through, if you are thinking of moving from bibs to HMEs, I think, you know, give it that chance. Definitely is my top tip. But in terms of data, John, we can definitely look into that for you. Not a problem.
I've got a comment from Jonathan here. So he says he's a new HME user, so 3 months into using them, and operation was beginning of December, and that's really good. It's really good practice.
Really great.
Yeah,
definitely. I think you know, sometimes you have your surgery, and if the hospital that you have your surgery at initiates the base plates and HMEs, or a Larry tube and a HME from the get-go, it makes that routine much easier to adjust to. And you know, I don't know if you're struggling with anything, Jonathan. I don't know whether you're sort of, you know, have you had radiotherapy after your surgery? Sometimes that can play a part in mucus production as well, if you're still going through treatment. So but keep it up. I think, you know, 3 months after surgery, that's you're very new still, very new. You've got, your skin's probably still healing. You might still have a bit of swelling under here, or still quite a lot of redness. Maybe your scar isn't even, you know, fully healed yet, depending on how your surgery went. So keep going, and if you have any more questions after today, as I say, reach out to your customer care agent or one of the nurses. You should still be looked after by one of our nurses in the office. So we've got nurses on the phone in the office, and they should check in with you, and they'll be able to give you lots of advice over the phone, or, you know, get a nurse out to you if it's suitable for you and within the area that we cover. Definitely reach out to us. But good, I'm glad.
Then got a question from John. So he uses 3 bibs instead of an HME because he's got sensitive skin caused by X-ray treatment. During last year, he became breathless during uphill cycling. He's asking, could this be due to lack of back pressure, so like kind of breathing resistance? And
yeah, absolutely, John. I think it probably could be. It sounds like the case. You know, 3 bibs, you definitely got some warmth there, so that's good. I think you definitely will have some some element of, you know, warmth and an element of filtration as well. But that breathing resistance, you've definitely lost it all. And what can happen? We spoke about breathing resistance being that sort of scaffolding, as it were, for those alveoli, those little air sacs that are at the ends of the branches of our lungs. So what can happen is the alveoli, the little air sacs at the very base of your lungs, they can sometimes collapse just because there isn't enough kind of scaffolding in place to keep them open. And this is where breathing techniques would come in really well for you, John, actually. I think that learning how to do different types of breathing and different breathing exercises, you know, deep breathing, holding it for a second, or, you know, a couple of seconds, that really helps the air get all the way through the lungs. So I would imagine, obviously I can't speak factually because I don't know you or your case, but you know, what I'm thinking off the top of my head is you're probably using only kind of the top half of your lungs, and the bottom half of your lungs maybe not working as well as they could be or should be. And there's other things to factor in. Do you have any kind of COPD? Are you an ex-smoker? All of those things. Do you have asthma that, you know, already has caused a bit of upset in your lungs? So take all of that into consideration. Sensitive skin, I don't know what base plates you've tried. You've probably tried all of them. If you've kind of had your laryngectomy a little while now, but something like what comes to mind, like the nighttime HME is probably one of the nicer ones. It kind of has a cooling effect. So if you haven't already tried most of the base plates out there, it might be worth looking back into, or potentially something like a tube or a little Larry button that just pops in your hole so you can facilitate a HME. That's often quite a good alternative to base plates. So lots of things to look into, John, if you haven't already. So again, we can help you with that, or your clinician as well. Speak to your clinician at the hospital and see if they've got any kind of ideas as well.
So we've got another question from Jonathan. So he says, being new to this and a professional driver, which HME would you recommend for driving, and as he works away from Monday to Friday?
Professional driver, that sounds good. So again, Jonathan, this will really depend on you as a person. You know, how good was your lung health beforehand? How strong are your lungs now? Are you getting on okay with your current HME? Which HME is it currently? You know, if you're on something like the Provox Life range, you would have the home HME, which is the foam is the most dense, so that would give you kind of the most resistance, the most warmth out of them all, with the exception of the Protect. Again, if you're kind of conscious about COVID or infections, and you I don't know if you have a screen for whoever you drive around. I'm assuming it's that kind of driving and not kind of race car thrill seeking driving. But yeah, so if you haven't got kind of an extra bit of protection in your car that barriers you off from your clients, do you need something like the Protect? But it's really about what's comfortable for you. I would always recommend, you know, if you can handle it and you cope all right with it, I would always recommend the one with the most warmth and the most resistance, and that would be something like the home out of all the standard HMEs that we have. The Protect can be, yes, it's got that filter, the electrostatic filter that filters out viruses and bacterias, but what you can find is some patients and some people don't like to wear it for kind of an extended period of time, because it can be a little bit, the resistance is a bit higher. But you know, driving, sitting down as a job, it's you shouldn't really need to use too much kind of puff and puff, as it were, and you'd be able to push to speak with all of them. So it's about finding what suits you really. But I would recommend, you know, one that's got the best kind of depth of foam, the density of foam, to give you the most warmth out of it all, because that will ultimately keep your lungs working nicely. So yeah, see how you're doing and see what you think and how you're coping after your surgery. And you can build it up from there. So if you were someone that's struggling, maybe, like, you know, you're struggling with the resistance, so somebody that wears a bib all the time, the first time they if they were to put on a home straight away, they might find that they struggle a little bit with that. So it may be that they use a less dense foam to begin with and build that routine up and build. It's like practice, isn't it? It's your lungs are practicing to have that resistance back again. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. So then got a question from Leslie. I wear an HME 24 hours and have no problem during the day when in the house, but it's when I go outside walking, mucus builds up too much. So I think I have to take off at home and find it difficult wearing a scarf.
Okay. I think this sounds like it might be a bit of, you know, quite a simple fix, or something simple to try. So you wear when you go outside, so you're wearing the home all the time, are you? So
it says HME.
HME. Yeah. So it says, when I go outside,
I wear HME 24 hours and have no problem during the day.
Have to take home out. So he has to take home out. So I think you're wearing the home HME of the Provox Life range, it sounds like. And if that is the case, it may be that you want to kind of go down with a HME. So maybe you want to swap to a Go, or if it's a walk and you're still finding the goes a bit much, you could try the energy as well for walking. So what that means is that the foam is a little bit less dense, so breathing is a little bit easier through the HME. And what that might allow you to do is then put a scarf on top of it. It would be really interesting to know whether you wear the nighttime HME, Les. I know some of my patients that I visited out in the community, they had a really, surprisingly good outcome from wearing the nighttime HME, and they're sleeping better and their mucus is more controlled. So, and this is what we call situational usage of your HMEs. Okay, so as I say, it's not relevant for everyone. Some people get on fine with just the one type of HME and they have no problems, but if you are someone that's struggling with different situations wearing the same HME, you might want to explore a slightly less dense HME to start with. And again, Les, it's practice. It is, I can't stress enough, the consistency and kind of pushing through that hard point. If you find that a different HME doesn't work as well, it may be that you need to, in the house, maybe practice. You're sitting down, go to your staircase if you have one, and do a couple of step ups and step downs just to get your heart rate going and get your body moving a little bit. That can sometimes help to build up your exercise tolerance as well. But yeah, I think if you're wearing the home HME, try something like the Go or the Energy while you're walking, and see if that helps, because it'll be a bit easier to breathe through. You might be able to put a scarf over top, and you might find that helps. So yeah.
Lovely. And then we've got a question from Joy. So we've trialed the Provox Life range, but unfortunately had to swap back to Provox range as base plates in the Provox Life range were really sticky and difficult to remove no matter what we did. Is there any future base plates in the pipeline at all? For the new Provox Life range. So they're too sticky.
Too
Hard
sticky.
to remove.
Yeah, wow. So that's a shame, actually, Joy. That is a shame that your base plate, you find them too sticky. At the moment, there's nothing in the pipeline that we know of. I do know that they're making some kind of minor adjustments as we kind of find more feedback and get more feedback from laryngectomy patients and how they're finding the products. So, I know at the very beginning there was a minor adjustment made to the nighttime HME and things like the coupling for the HME and the base plate. I know that they'll always improve on those as kind of time goes on. So we really take that into consideration, and you can let your customer care agent know that you're finding them too sticky, and we can pop in kind of a product feedback to an email address. But I mean, yeah,
you're using the remover.
Remover. I think it's about finding that routine. So it says no matter what you did. So it does sound like you kind of tried everything. I don't know if you had a nurse go out, Joy, if it's something, I'm not sure where you're based, but it might be worth finding out whether there's a nurse in your area to come and visit. Sometimes just having that face-to-face interaction and kind of troubleshooting is really beneficial. So yeah, at the moment there aren't any more base plates in the pipeline, but never say never. We're always developing and expanding. So watch out for anything in the future. But as I say, in the meantime, if there is a nurse in your area, definitely reach out to your customer care agent to see if we can come out and help you at all.
Another question on kind of products. Are there any FFP2 material bibs available?
No. So again, I think I mentioned earlier, we don't actually advertise them as kind of HMEs. We advertise them as more of a protector because of the difficulty in sort of gaining that data that you need to kind of put numbers. We really like research and we really like numbers and science to back up the products, and that's quite difficult to find with bibs because of the gapping and the way that they move around. But
there's actually a bit from Alana. So yeah, I wanted on clinical education, the lead, Alana, she's just said like some information regarding bibs versus HME. So there is a paper to show that bibs work well to humidify, but only if they are completely closed around the stoma without any leaks, which is really hard to achieve because you're constantly kind of lifting them out the way to care for the stoma. And yeah, there's like the study kind of details down here as well. So
yeah, take a look in that chat box. But yeah, that's kind of what we find often, is that you get that gapping.
So question from Sue. I've got a sunken stoma. It's hard to keep a base plate on. I do use the nighttime one, which is the softest, but that doesn't always stay on long. So I have to use the old sort alternatively, which is not so good.
Okay. Uses a
Larry button. Yeah, but I find the Life one not as flexible, and the Life HME sticks out more than the original. Okay.
Interesting. That is interesting, because actually the profile, the diameter was increased to allow for a slightly lower profile of the Provox Life. So a sunken stoma, I don't know. You find it hard to keep a base plate on. Again, Sue, sometimes speaking to your clinician or seeing if there's a nurse in your area that can come out to troubleshoot. I think these are really difficult ones for us to answer on a platform like this, because there's nothing better than visually seeing you and assessing things. Sometimes having that visual is much better for us. But you find the nighttime one, which is of the softest, doesn't always stay on so long. Yeah, so I think it sounds like you could probably do with a bit of help with that, really, just to troubleshoot and see if we have any kind of suggestions. So I'm not sure where you're based, Sue, but reach out and see either your clinician or to us, and see if we can get a visit to you and have a chat about things in person. But yeah, it's interesting that you find that it sticks out much further than the original. I'm not sure. Do you have a ringed Larry tube, or you use a Larry button? So I'm not sure about that one, I'm afraid. But we're more than happy to help if you're in an area where we can come out and visit you. Okay.
And we've got a few little tips on the runny nose. So you can learn to blow your nose, says Dean, but it takes a while. Yeah.
That's definitely a speech and language bag, isn't it? Go speak with a speech and language therapist if you've got one, and they'll as John says, if you block your stoma as if to talk, the air going onto your throat helps to blow your nose out. That's a good shout. Yeah, really good advice, John. Thank you for that. So I guess you take a breath in, you'd occlude your stoma, and you'd have a tissue at the ready. But again, chat with your speech and language therapist about that, and they're really good. Esophageal speech. They've got lots of hints and tips about how to about your altered airway and the best thing to do from that point of view.
There's also been a link put in the chat. It's a bit more informational guide for laryngectomies and in the COVID pandemic. So that link's there. Just one point of view, but we can contact you with more information. So that link's in the chat box as well.
And Les, who says he's worn a HME every day since surgery in 2019 and doesn't know any different. That's the way we'd love it. That is gold standard, Les. So wherever he had your surgery, big round of applause to them, because I think that, and obviously it's not always appropriate depending on your situation, but having that is definitely gold standards. That's what we want. We don't want you to kind of know any different, because if you breathe through an open stoma and it's nice and easy to breathe, then sometimes that's the deciding factor, when actually you can learn to kind of cope with that resistance. But what's Jonathan says?
So
in use at the moment. HGV driver. That's a mouthful. Only you and maybe one other in the cab. Fine. So, I mean, Jonathan, that would be really up to you then. That would be really up to what you feel most comfortable with. And as I say, I would always recommend kind of the biggest density foam. So that would be the home. And that will just give you all the warmth you need and all the function of your lungs, you know, the best that a HME can do for you. So that one, or the Protect. So you've got the Protect in you. So it sounds like you've got a good options going on. So maybe you'd wear your home when you're driving, when you're doing work, and kind of sitting around the house as well. Maybe you'd switch to your Go if, I don't know if your driving includes kind of unloading a load of boxes or whatever, or you know, if you're around the house doing some cleaning or going out for a walk, you might put your Go on for that, where you need a bit more puff, you know, gets your heart rate going a bit more. And then, as I said, your Protect, you can use that if you're in busy spaces, or I don't know if you're going on the tube or something like that, or going on a bus where lots of people are and most people would have a mask on. Your Protect comes in quite handy then.
There's a little message a bit further down from Alan, just saying to John, he's a driver himself as well, and he finds the Go is the best, as you can do the physical work, but without getting too breathless. Yeah.
Good.
So, yeah.
Now, since my operation in December 2020, I use either the standard or sensitive adhesive base plates during the day with Provox Life HMEs, depending on what I'm doing. Good, perfect. Clubbing. At night, I use a Larry button and holder with a night HME. That sounds great, Noel. That sounds like you've got everything going on well. I don't know if you've had a nurse come out and see you at all, but hopefully they've been able to help you with that as well as your clinicians as well.
So from John King, I suffer with red skin all the time using base plates and have used Larry button for 2 years now for HMEs even at night.
Perfect. Yeah. Great. That's a really nice bit of advice. Thanks, John. And it's nice to know that it works for you as well. So anyone else that's struggled to find a base plate due to sensitive skin, something like a button or a tube can be a really good alternative for you. And the button's quite nice because it doesn't go all the way in. It kind of just sits around the opening of the stoma. So I can see we're a little bit over time here. So much discussion going on. So let's have a quick flick through, because we're going to have to end soon. Thanks for that discussion on bibs versus HMEs. So we'll now try persevering to get HMEs. Great.
That's good. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah. Been using 3 bibs for 4 years now. Wow. That's a lot of bibs to go through, isn't it? But yeah, John, definitely. I'm not, as I said, I'm not sure where you're based, but give one of the customer care guys a call in the office, and they'll be able to kind of let you know whether a home visit is feasible. And we can also do video calls as well if you need a little bit of advice. Uses the home. Noel uses use Go at home and for walking energy for cycling and tennis. Good. And Protect at football matches. Great. That's really, really good. Love that. Sounds like you're using everything appropriately. I typed it wrong earlier. Wear the home HME during the day and the Go HME whilst out. So Leslie, I think you were the one that was getting a bit breathless, weren't you? I think. So yeah, it might be that you need to try the energy while you're doing a walk or something, and build that routine up. Yeah. But perseverance, I can't stress that enough. Perseverance, your body will adapt and it will get used to it.
So another base plate's very difficult to remove, pulls your skin too much.
Yeah, and again, that might be down to processes. It might be that you need some, adhesive remover, something like that. If you're already using that, it might be that you need to try a different type, or I don't know. Yeah, so have a little think about your processes and make sure you're doing good skincare and you're making sure you're putting a skin barrier on and using the remover and everything. And if you're still struggling, reach out to your clinicians or ourselves, and we can give you a little bit of guidance on that as well. Just reply, we did have lovely Kathrin after a few phone calls. Good. Okay, so you've had Kathrin go out to see you. Yeah, she's lovely, isn't she? Really, really knowledgeable. She's one of our nurses in the Midlands. Do you use a base plate adhesive remover? Yes,
The
so
sticky ones,
yeah, anyone with a base plate, we always recommend using a remover to take that off. And sometimes you might need a couple to take it off, depending on the type of base plate and how sticky it is for you. But yes, use the adhesive remover and skin barrier every day. That's really good. So that makes me very, very happy as a nurse. Good. Thanks, Sue. She's going to have to go. And Dean, you only remove your base plate once a week. That's amazing. That you must have a really good good routine. But you know, what's right for you may not be suitable for everyone, but it's really preferences. And if your skin is happy and you're not getting too much mucus and rubbish trapped around the inside, sort of between your stoma and the base plate, and if it's lasting a week, then that's really great. For some people might do it daily. I think that most people would do it daily or every other day, something like that. So it's just about, finding that routine that works for you. And we're more than happy to help you with that. And you're having a nice little chat between each other like this. Not really. Use the blue brushes to help. Yeah. Good. Mucus stuck around the opening. I'm not sure. It varies from kind of hospital to hospital about processes, but some people use a little some plastic tweezers just to get that out, or different cleaning techniques as well. So whatever's your norm and what's working for you, and we can get some advice and tips. And your clinicians, your speech and language therapists, they're often full of hints and tips as well if you're still struggling with your routine. Noel just changes HME throughout the day whenever required. Yep. Is it advisable to use a face mask as well as a protect HME? Yes. Again, Mike, it's a little bit of a grey scale line at the moment, but I think that ultimately the viruses and bacteria can still sit in your nose and your nasal passage and your upper airway, even though it's not connected to your lungs anymore. So for ultimate protection, I would always recommend wearing a mask as well. If you can, mask over your face and a protect over your stoma, you're definitely covering all the bases then, aren't you? You have a button waiting for you at the hospital. Good luck with it. Let us know how you get on. And there we go. Thank you, everyone. So that is really useful advice. Really glad. So that brings us to the end. We've run over by 10 minutes. Really sorry, but that was a really good discussion. And we hope you've learnt loads today. And as I say, join next week for the workshop where you can have your cameras on and interact with your microphones and stuff with Alison. And she'll be there to teach you through sort of breathing techniques. So I hope you'll have a really nice rest of your day. And please send us an email or give us a ring if you need any further advice. Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Good.